It's time for the Young United People podcast with Nysha and Jayden.
Hi guys, welcome to another Yupisode. My name is Jayden.
And I'm Nysha.
And this is the Young United People Yup podcast, where we talk about all things Jesus and UCJCI. Today is an extra special day because we're going to be talking about what it means to be of support to our fellow brothers and sisters in ministry. Today we have a very, very special guest, so you're going to want to stay tuned because we have a bunch to talk about. So, Nysha, as people who tend to be on the front lines, or probably like on stage singing, or probably dancing, or even just serving within our context, how do you support other persons in their ministry endeavors?
Okay, so at my church, as you said, I grew up being at the front of a majority of the things that we did. So choir and singing and dancing, everything. But what in 2020, when COVID came to Jamaica, we had church online and things. So, we had to take a different route. And I was in charge of making the PowerPoints and ensuring that the Zoom and stuff was running. And that was the start of my kind of digital media era in the church.
Yeah.
And so I ensured that we had the PowerPoints, everything was running smoothly. I collected all the audio and stuff. And it translated into like face-to-face worship. Back to normal, as you know it now. So I still assist with the audio visuals at church and stuff. And on the steering committee, I'm the secretary. So, I'm not necessarily at the forefront of everything. But make sure to let them vote and, because without communication, nobody will really know about what's happening. So how do you
honestly, I was struggling at first with this topic because, I started to, reflect and be like, actively, I don't feel like I offer as much support. I gotta sound bad, but it's like usually when you're the person who is on the front lines, sometimes you are the one who probably, need more support. But then listening to you talk, I realized but a lot of the stuff that I do is actually supportive work. And so, for example, with being on the exec as well, I've been chair of executives, but I've also been a cultural coordinator, a public relations officer, a vice president. So I have to give support to the persons who are in, for want of a better way of wording it, higher capacities, And so even within the pandemic, I was on the synodical executive as public relations officer. And during that time, we had to transition as a church to fully online and try to keep youth ministry alive when we can't interact. We can't have sports day in person. We can't have youth quake in person. That was mad difficult, but we found ways to do it online. So for example, I remember in the pandemic, we didn't have sports day, so we did a fitness fiesta online, and I was able to help set up the streaming and stuff for that. So it was fun to offer support in that area. But on the subject of support, sometimes support doesn't look like a capacity thing. So it may not look like a position like PRO. It may not look like secretary. It may not look like being an assistant. But it can look like just being a friend. Somebody that they can come to vent to pray with, to seek support, to seek advice. How do you offer support in that context?
So as mentioned in one of the other episodes, I feel like people see me as somebody who they can come to speak to, which I'm very grateful for. And I realized that a lot of the time, I was talking to a friend yesterday about this actually. A lot of the times when people come to you for support, they don't necessarily want you to say anything back to them. Some of the time it's just to listen.
Yeah, for sure.
Because a lot of the times when people say stuff to us, we might feel pressured into responding because we feel like that's the thing to do. But sometimes it's just listening and being present and ensuring that people know they have somebody to talk to.
And also to just know that somebody's there. Like you said in another episode about just showing up. And showing up goes a long way. So even with funerals, one of the reasons why people go to funerals of people they don't know is because there are people alive who are grieving. And you just coming to sit in the congregation as they celebrate the life of their loved ones, that's funny, of their loved one, it goes a long way for them. And so, like, for example, our friend group, we do meetings like 3 times a week. And that was fun and dandy in the summer, but today on this day, we don't have the time, we cannot manage it, it's a lot. And so I make the effort at least attend 1 out of the week. If I'm just going to be there online so that whosoever is delivering the word, who's leading the devotion, is like, you have one more person in here listening to you, giving your strength, rooting for you, here for the word. And so I may not even say anything and I may not actively participate, but my presence is enough to be like, yo, you have people here supporting you as a carrier of the ministry. That can go a long way.
A long way.
And let's talk about Moses and Aaron for I keep saying, and I will reference Moses a lot. I was going to get prepared for this. Moses is my boy. But in Exodus 17, I believe it is, when was it Joshua who had the war against whoever those people were? Moses was up on the mountain and he had her on one side, Aaron on the other side. And when his hands were up, like, their side was winning, and when his side was down, they were losing, but Aaron and her were there to, like, hold up his hand and give support so that they could continue to see the victory that they wanted to achieve in that situation. And it's the same thing that we're supposed to be our brother's keeper. We're supposed to hold up each other's hands so that we may each continue doing the work that God has called us to do.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of the times people see supportive roles as being menial or they don't hold as much value. But if you didn't have the quote-unquote little men in the background working, then the bigger heads, they wouldn't have a lot of the resources or the necessaries that they need to carry out their capacity.
That's so true. And I can even think about people in youth ministry who, especially like secretaries, who I feel like have turned it. When I think about like a Vanessa Blessed, who as secretary, I'm not from the NERM, the Northeastern Regional Mission Council, but I could still see from the Western perspective how much she brought to the table. And even being on an executive with like a Trafina Reed as secretary, like, I don't know if you've ever been lucky to witness Trafina at Sports Day and how like she goes hard and how she works and she helps to hold up the ministry that happens at Sports Day. And so people might see those works and be like, oh, they're not on the front lines and they miss the power of that ministry. But it is those ministries that help to hold up every single thing that is happening at these events. Yeah, but on the topic of supporting people, I think the best person to talk about it is somebody who actively works in full-time supportive ministry. And so we have a very, very special guest. I will be back after these messages.
Let us paint the city red at Youth Convention 2024 on May 5 at the Montego Bay Convention Center, where we will come with our praise, we will come for the outpouring, and we will enjoy the fellowship as youths from across the island of Jamaica come together to send up some praise to the Almighty Father. See you on May 5 at the Montego Bay Convention Center. You have to be there.
So hey guys, and welcome back. And as you can see, we've been joined by somebody. Who is she? So this is Sheree O'Connor, and she is the Programme Secretary of SRMC. That's so.
Yeah, so Sheree, I go ask you this question. Programme Secretary.
Yeah.
How? Because one day we were on exec together, and the next day you were Programme Secretary. Explain that to me.
I don't know. I mean, the Lord works in mysterious ways. I know I was working in Richmond office at the time when the position became open, or at least when I learned it was open. And I remember some of the things that Auntie Francine used to do, which included some of her work with the UCYPF. And I said, okay, I want to be a part of that. And so here I am.
How has the experience been?
Yeah. Listen.
Oh, this is
there are good days. There are bad days. You know, it's It's just what it is. But learning more about the UCJCI has been particularly interesting for me. And being able to work with the people in the office, particularly Mrs. Andrade and Mrs. McConnell. Yeah. So,
what would you say has been the biggest lesson you've learned so far?
It's more of a reminder for me, but we can't stay in the synod office and in the regional office and fix the church.
Oh. So, understanding that then, what more do you think needs to be done to address the current climate that the church is at? Because we've dwindled exponentially since the pandemic. What strategies do you know to be in place to fix that? And what are some things you think can be done?
In a specific ministry or just overall?
Overall. Or if you want to highlight something.
Yeah. You know, very young people. So let me speak to young people. I know in like congregations where there are no active fellowships or young people, so to speak, you need somebody on the ground who is determined, who is willing, who is committed to the work, because it's not easy. You get me? You can't just get up one day and say, okay, you're going to do this thing, because it might not work. And if it doesn't work, what are you going to do? Are you just going to stop, or are you going to move forward with it, right? So if congregations can identify that one person or a team of persons that will push that mandate, then just like that, the youth ministry can move from 0 to at least 2, and from 2 to at least 4, because it grows exponentially like that. Yeah,
for sure.
So I think there's much work to be done in our congregations. We can't stay in our church buildings and say, oh, people not coming to church. The church is not the building. So we have to get to this place where we recognize we need to start doing something different. And if that means going out on the road and doing something else, then so be it. Take the chance.
So I recently met you. Last year recently met you. And I thought you were part of the exec when I just saw you. And then I heard Programme Secretary. Wow, that's kind of crazy. So why that kind of ministry and not like quote unquote a regular job?
I sense a call on my life towards full-time ministry, but not necessarily ministry in the sense, have a whole congregation, like a pastoral ministry in that sense. Not saying it's not possible, because, like I said, God works in mysterious ways, right? But I can't see myself at this time in a regular job, whether I'm qualified to or not. This is where I see myself working in the United Church.
So tell us a little bit about what the Programme Secretary does and why a capacity like that is important for the regions.
As the name implies, the Programme Secretary does a lot in terms of programs. So whatever the region has planned, whether it be children and youth ministry, missions and outreach, evangelism, discipleship, leadership, all of that, the Programme Secretary is to support and plan and execute those particular programs, or assist the vice chairs in the execution of those programs in whatever way possible. And that includes to training and capacity building for our leaders and people who are just interested in seeing the growth of our church and participating in a larger scale in our church. But at the same time, it also includes some other things, such as, the way the church works with our institutions. Our schools in the southern region, we have the Mount Olivet Boys Home and we have the Senior Citizens Home. So sometimes there are some things that come to my desk for me to address as a Programme Secretary.
Awesome, love that. So you've worked actively in youth ministry. You've been on the youth exec. I know it's fairly recent, as well, like mid-pandemic recent.
Yeah, pre to mid actually.
Yes. So, working on the executive, what major lessons did you learn, and what impact do you feel like you were able to have while doing that?
Truth be told, I don't think I got the full experience to see the kind of impact, because it was only for a year pre-pandemic and then another year mid-pandemic. And you know, in the middle of the pandemic, you have so much to adjust to. And then in congregations, some things pretty much just stopped altogether, which made it that much more difficult. So I'm not able to say how being on the executive would have impacted that or impacted me. The major lesson is the same as before. If we're not doing what we need to do in our congregations, then the work at the regional level just multiplies tenfold.
I will say that, and I was talking about this with Nysha earlier, that sometimes we don't get to see, I mentioned it in the last episode, we don't get to see the full impact of the work that we do.
Yeah.
And so we have to show up and just work according to our calling and let the Holy Spirit handle the impact part of it.
Right.
And when we were on the executive together, you were regional PRO, I was synodical, so we were on the PR committee for UCYPF. And I remember we'd be having conversations in that space where persons would be like vulnerable about things they were going through. And I got a front row experience to watch you just offer some of like the most profound, powerful, loving, gracious advice. And that reaction is like evident that like you don't even do it like consciously. It's like you see an opportunity to like be a light and you just do that. In your personal spaces, how do you offer support to your peers in ministry? I'm sure your friends with like pastors and dancers, musicians, all of those people. How do you lend support in, for example, their advice seasons?
Well, before I get to that, while you were talking about, not being able to see the impact, it occurred to me that when we're in ministry, we won't necessarily see the return on investment, so to speak. You won't see that immediately. But down the line or later, you might see somebody who was maybe 13 at the time, then when they reach 25, they are doing the same thing, or they have entered ministry, and then that's where you can see, okay, this is how that works out. Yeah, so
see the fruit of your labor.
Yeah, exactly that. But to actually answer your question, would I lend myself in that capacity? To just be open, I think, to having certain conversations. Even in ministry, we do need that encouragement, because while we are ministers, we're also human. And so there are some times where we have our challenges, we have our valley seasons, we have our moments when we don't feel very confident. We have our moments where we don't feel like this is something that we can do. And in those moments, if I'm there, I try to support. I try to say, this is something that the Lord sees that you are able to do. And we can see that in how the Lord spoke with Moses and how the Lord encouraged even Jeremiah. So, having those kinds of conversations. I remember one of my young people, she was nominated to be president of the youth fellowship, and as an advisor, she came to me and she didn't necessarily want to do it. I said to her, pretty much, these are people who see this kind of potential in you. It means not just adhering to pressure, but it means that they see something in you that you might not see in yourself. So try it. And I think in that regard, or in that way, there are people who are able to say, all right, let me do this thing, and it worked out.
So, we spoke about you pouring into people, because I got to witness that last year when I saw you at the retreat, where you held and even me, I'm a person, but you still offered your assistance to us, and you're very welcoming. You're a very welcoming person. So, you pour into a lot of people. So, how do people pour into you? Who are the people who pour into you?
Okay. The people who pour into me are my friends and family. Like, I have a close circle. So you have people like Yashai Williams, who's, my cousin. You have people like Trifina Reed. There's my sister. There's Trevon. Being able to have these people, like, it's a community. It's familial. It's friendly, but we're also like-minded, and so we can have certain conversations that I can't have with other people, and they're able to do the same with me. So it's like a mutual discipleship or pouring into, I should say.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Because I know pouring can be a lot.
And you can't pour from it. And
empty.
You can't. Endowment, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel like that's a sermon that I shall always.
I've always been teaching
it to me 24/7. But on the topic of not being able to pour from an empty cup, for those persons who, because honestly, I think a lot of times people think it's only the persons who are on the front line who experience the depletion, for want of a better word. But people like you experience the exhaustion, the frustration, the God, should I do this? God, we can't bother. Like, you guys experience it as well. So for that person listening who are supporting the ministries within their context, who probably feel overwhelmed, who feel frustrated, like what advice do you have for them?
I say talk. Talk with somebody. Whether you're a minister or a close friend or somebody else in ministry, talk with someone. You never know. Just by having a conversation, the spirit might say, okay, try this. Or just in talking it out, you might recognize something that you can do differently. So I'd say talk. Number 2, sometimes we need to step back. Just a moment where, we replenish, we refresh ourselves, and then when we finish, we hit the road again. That one, it's difficult to do, especially if you're stepping back where there's no one to fail. Right. But that's why succession planning becomes that much more important. And I think mentorship as well. But taking a step back, and 3, bring somebody with you along your journey, which ties into the mentorship and the succession planning. Because at the end of the day, if you are no longer there and life changes, things happen in life very quickly. And if you are not there, then something shouldn't fall apart.
So my question for you as well, because you're a younger person in this capacity, so I feel like you're kind of lucky or blessed. This is the word blessed. In that regard, because you get to sit at the feet of so many persons with wisdom and experience. Would you say that's one of the merits of being in the office space? I
do, because you're in the United Church, but there are some things that you just don't learn. You don't learn like the ethos. You don't learn much about the Constitution other than you actually looking in there and reading it for yourself. And you might not be able to ask certain questions as it relates to our Constitution and bylaws. And just being around those people, it inspires you to want to look into it. There are some aspects of it that tie into my role, and personally I'm always out for learning. I think I'm a lifelong learner, so it just works out for me in that way. Other people might not see it the same way, but I think wherever you go in life, you should always be able to learn something that especially would come in handy when you get to that next chapter.
Right. I agree 100%. So my last question for you then, Sheree, is we need more workers. The vineyard is very sparse. There's nobody out there, you know?
The harvest is plenty.
Well, the workers are few. You know? For the person listening who maybe wants to do more or need to do more and not doing anything, what do you have to say to them? Like, what advice do you have? Like, how do I get more involved? How do I do more?
Yeah. How do you do more? Enter into... Alright, before you even get to that point, you have to recognize in yourself, like, why do you even want to do more? You get me? Because you cannot do it out of sight. You cannot do it out of because you don't have anything doing. No. Remember, just help out with church in this way in our family. No. Recognize why you're doing it. If it's not for the glorification of God and the building of the kingdom, no bother. You get me? Sure, the experience is good, but this is what it is for. And truth be told, sometimes that does come after a while. Yeah, but don't be, close to it. So, one, recognize why it is you're doing it. Two, you have to enter into those spaces where you might not even see the opportunity being there, which sometimes comes in like a voluntary role or just being in a church office, and you see, okay, this can be done differently, or I can offer myself in this way. So I mentioned at the top of our conversation how I saw Auntie Francine when she was in this role, the kind of things that she used to do. And so if I was not in that capacity as PR at the time, to have that interaction with her, to see the kind of things that she was doing, then I probably would not have become a program secretary. So it's about getting into that space where you recognize what is what and what you can do. It can be a bit daunting, I think, especially if you only see particular set of people or a particular few people, and you might feel like, oh, you want to be invited to these things. Don't wait for an invitation, because it might never come, but it does not mean that the work is not there to be done, for sure.
Position yourself.
Yeah, and
Positioning.
I also just be mindful that the persons, that the Sherees that you see, and the Nyshas that you see, the Jaydens that you see, are persons who avail themselves to the calling, to the support. It just took us showing up one day in order to do everything that we ended up doing. And so, it's just showing up one day. Like, I feel like for the past few episodes, that's what we've been saying, like, show up, because showing up goes a long way.
There's so much more in this being present.
And to add to that, stepping outside of your comfort zone, you don't gain anything from being in your comfort zone. You're comfortable. Comfortable breeds complacency. It does not add to growth, whether personally or spiritually. None of the alleys. You have to be willing to step outside and to try something new.
Yeah, and also to be open. And I feel like you said that earlier as well. Like, because with learning and with growing, you get to realize, like, one, the world doesn't work the way you thought it worked. And two, you're going to learn that you have some misconceptions, because regardless of whatever age you're at, like, not knowing makes you naive to things.
Right.
And so being in the space exposes you. Like, you might look at Sheree and be like, Sheree knows so much. But it's because Sheree is in the space why she's able to articulate the things that she's sharing with us right now.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, Sheree, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for coming. It was really nice having you.
Yes.
Yeah. It was good being here.
Thank you for the work that you are doing.
Yeah.
I got to work with you during the pandemic, but it was people like you who made it feel worth it. Like, or even make it feel easier, because like the stress of the pandemic itself was crazy.
Yeah.
To do ministry in the pandemic was a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
Especially when it sometimes felt like it wasn't having the impact you wanted it to have. But it was like your perseverance and your commitment to everything that we had going on, that was one of the driving forces for me. And I know you're bringing the same energy here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I even remember the last time we started talking, the last time we got to talk to each other. Because we don't get to talk to each other at these events, because it's such a fast-paced thing. Yeah, you know? But November was the last time we got to like talk. And we just having a casual conversation, and you just started dropping gems and all of that. And so just keep doing what you're doing. Because even if you can't see the impact, it's there. It's there.
Okay. I also want to encourage you too. You know, I don't know Nysha that well, but you know, the potential is there. The work is there. UCJCI needs the young people who will step forward, take this thing seriously. I've got business with their plans. Yeah, it's serious stuff. And just by being a Christian, putting yourself out there as a young lady, as a young woman, you can inspire other young people and stimulate their minds to think about, okay, church, okay, God, okay, living my life. You know, it's like a domino effect like that. So keep doing what you guys do.
Thank you.
So that's our episode for today. Thank you all for joining us. We're looking forward to having you next week. And so you can watch us on YouTube, Instagram.
You can watch us on YouTube, listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, and follow us
on Instagram
and TikTok. Yeah, Sheree, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the Young family. I always remember to say, bye guys.
Wait, what?
Okay.
Always remember to say you want me to finish.
Alright, ready? So I always remember to say, See you next week, guys. Bye.